Today we're making brown butter candy cookie bars. These are great if you have leftover candy hanging around from Halloween, Valentine's Day, Easter, Arbor Day, whatever occasion has most recently brought candy into your life, or if you just have a sweet tooth or love somebody who does. So let's get baking. We'll start by making our brown butter. We're going to take 2 sticks of butter, that's 8 ounces of butter, cut into big chunks about 1 inch or so across. Put those in a small saucepan and turn the heat up to medium-high. And we will let that butter melt. It will foam a little bit, and then eventually it will brown. And this is going to take altogether in the range of 7 or 8 minutes, okay? But we're going to watch it pretty carefully as it goes, especially as it gets beyond the initial kind of foaming, and we'll whisk as we go along. So while that butter starts to melt, I'll make sure I have my brown sugar measured out into a large bowl. This is 1 3/4 cup of light brown sugar. You can use dark brown sugar or mostly dark brown sugar and a little granulated sugar if you prefer. But 1 3/4 cups, which for the brown sugar works out to 370 grams or so. And into that, I will stir 2 teaspoons of salt. If you're using table salt, go a little bit light on those 2 teaspoons. If you're using kosher salt, go a little heavier or a little bit of a rounded teaspoon. Just going to stir that into the brown sugar, and we'll set that aside while our butter starts to melt and then brown. And we'll check back in with that butter when we start to get brown flecks at the bottom, and we'll be stirring it into our brown sugar. So we'll check back in a few minutes. My butter has been cooking for just over 5 minutes, and you can see the foam has subsided, although it's definitely still bubbling. Well, we're up to 6 minutes now, and I have started to get brown bits at the edge of the pot. You can see that there. I am going to turn the heat off. So as soon as it starts to brown, it is in danger of burning. All right, I'm going to whisk really well to get all of those brown bits up, and then I will pour this brown butter right into my brown sugar and salt. And we'll be mixing the dough for our cookies right into this bowl here. So let's get this spoon out of the way and go ahead and whisk that hot brown butter into the brown sugar just until it's well incorporated, like so. All right. And some of the butter will kind of seep back up to the surface. That's okay. This will get whisked again as we add other ingredients. All right. Speaking of other ingredients, we're going to go right back to our pot with the bits of brown butter still in the bottom. That is perfectly fine. We'll build on that flavor. And we are going to add to that 3 tablespoons of flour. That's 23 grams of flour, like so. Tap the sugar butter mixture off of the whisk because we're just going to keep using it. We will add ½ cup of milk, preferably whole milk, but if it's not whole milk, that's all right. We're going to whisk this mixture until it's smooth, and then we will heat it on medium-low heat, and we're going to make basically a little paste. All right, and this extra step will allow our dough to stay nice and soft, and our finished cookies or cookie bars to be blondies, whatever we call them, to be nice and chewy and to stay moist for a few days if you can even keep them around for that long. So I'll put the heat up and turn it to medium low, and I'm going to cook this and whisk as I go, and as it thickens, which will only take 2 or 3 minutes, the whisk won't really be able to get through it, and I'll switch to a flexible spatula, and we're going to cook this until it thickens so much that it starts to hold together. All right, and here is this flour milk mixture. It's called a tanzong. It's borrowed from an Asian technique for bread making. And I'm going to take this, and you see again how it really just holds together on its own now. That's the texture we're looking for. And plunk it right into my bowl. And we are going to whisk this until that flour paste is fairly well incorporated into the butter sugar mixture. Quick note while we're doing this about the flour, I'm using bread flour. That will give this these cookie bars a nice chewy texture. You totally don't have to use bread flour. You can use all-purpose. They'll be ever so slightly less chewy, but they're going to be great. Don't worry about it. If you happen to have bread flour, though, it's really great here. And speaking of flours, you can do this with gluten-free flour mix, and it works really well too. In fact, that's the kind of bread flour I'm using, is gluten-free bread flour. All right, so I'm going to mix this until that butter is incorporated back in, because it's separated a little bit. And then once I do this, I'll be adding my next couple, I'll be adding my next couple of ingredients, which are 2 eggs cold from the refrigerator. That'll help to cool this batter down. And hey, you didn't have to think about getting the eggs out ahead of time. And 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. All right, so 2 eggs, 2. Give the hands a rinse. Vanilla extract. And while my butter was browning, I did also turn the oven on to 350 degrees, and I have a 9 by 13 pan lined with parchment paper and just greased at the corners, ready to go. All right, so we will whisk in our eggs and our vanilla like so, and you'll see little bits of that that flour paste, that tanzong, in here. Don't worry about that. Those will get mixed further in as we add the rest of our dry ingredients, and it's time to do that now. We have here the rest of our flour. Altogether, it would be 2 3/4 cups or 330 grams. I took the 3 tablespoons out, and so that leaves us, if we're doing it in grams, 307 grams of flour. Again, I'm using gluten-free bread flour. All-purpose flour is fine. All-purpose gluten-free flour is fine. Any of the above. All right, and to this, I will add 1 3/4 teaspoons of baking powder, like so, and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. I'm gonna grab a dry whisk and mix that together. You always want to give your leaveners a good 30 seconds to get mixed into whatever other ingredients you're adding them to. So whether that's adding them to the flour, sometimes we really short that. We just dump them in, give it a quick stir, and say, all right, we're done. And that's how we can wind up with uneven rising in our baked goods. So the concentration of leavener, baking soda, baking powder, what have you, in one spot in your dough or batter can cause an uneven rise, not to mention a bit of it that just doesn't taste great. All right, so give it 30 seconds. If you're adding it to wet ingredients and you're about to mix, with an electric mixer or something for a while, you're probably gonna be in good shape. All right, let me give this one more stir just to make sure that the butter hasn't kind of formed a layer on the top, and it hasn't. Great. And now our dry ingredients get added in. We are just going to whisk that in carefully, and I'm really just being careful because I don't want to wind up knocking some of that flour out across my kitchen counter. I'm going to whisk just until all of my flour is well incorporated into the batter, and that means that I'm not seeing any streaks. Oh, oven's ready. I'm not seeing any streaks of unmixed flour. All right, our batter looks good. You can smell the kind of caramel smell from the brown butter. One more thing to add, and of course that's our candy. I went with half Snickers and half M&Ms because those are the ones I like. I chopped the Snickers into little pieces, like, I don't know, centimeter square or a little bit smaller. And of course the M&Ms are the M&Ms. If you want, you can use, get in there. You can use any kind of chocolate-based candy you like, or you can use regular chocolate chips. If you do that, you might want to add just a few extra tablespoons or up to a quarter cup more sugar to the batter, and that's just because this candy is definitely sweeter than your average semi-sweet or bittersweet, like I usually use chocolate chips. All right, and it would work great that way too. All right, so now I've got my pan. I'm going to pour my batter or my dough, however you want to call it, into the pan. We'll spread that out into the corners and make sure that it's nice and even. If you want to make sure everyone knows that you've got M&Ms or candy in here, you can sprinkle a few more on top, but I think we're going to be in good shape as it is. All right. Like so. And then we'll slide this into the oven, and this will bake for somewhere between 34 and 38 minutes. All right, we want a toothpick tester to come out clean of batter. All right, so we will see these when they're out of the oven. Our candy cookie bars spent about 36 minutes in the oven, and they've cooled just enough for me to comfortably handle the pan, which means we can get them onto a cutting board and sneak a taste. To do that, I'm going to run a knife around the edges and just kind of work it in under the corners, and then I'll use this parchment paper sling to lift the whole thing out. So bear with me a moment. Okay, that feels pretty mobile, so deep breath, and there they go. All right, so we'll cut right down the center. Another cut here, And of course, these are bar cookies, so you can make them as big or small as you'd like. Sneak just one of these out. Let's see if we can get that to come cleanly. And there we go. There's bits of M&M and Snickers. They've sunk in a little bit, just little hints from the top. And they smell awesome. They're gonna taste good too. We hope you give this a try and you check back every Friday at 4 o'clock for a new recipe.